Hello, everyone. Today's webinar, EPR legislation, what brand owners and manufacturers need to know, will begin in about 1 minute. While you're waiting, be sure to register for upcoming webinars at iddba.org. Coming up on April 18th, we welcome back Jonna Parker of Circana and Jack Ince of the IDDBA in the Dairy, Deli, and Bakery Trends Recap of March 2024. In this interactive webinar, they will review key findings from the March Trends Report, highlighting sales drivers and top takeaways, and how dairy, deli, and bakery are performing compared to overall fresh foods and food and beverage categories. Deli associates, cheesemongers, and enthusiasts, get your study caps on. Registration is open for 2 in-person charcuterie professional certification exams this year. The first is on June 8th at the IDDBA show in Houston, Texas, and the second will take place at the American Cheese Society Conference in Buffalo, New York on July 10th. Reach out to education@iddba.org for more information. Welcome, everyone. My name is Miles Allen, Education Coordinator at the IDDBA. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, EPR Legislation, What Brand Owners and Manufacturers Need to Know. A couple of reminders before we get started. Please submit any questions using the Q&A button and we'll answer as many as possible at the end of the presentation. The recording of this webinar will be available to members to view on iddba.org. Now I'd like to introduce today's presenters, Beth Smith, Bruce Carter, and John Haidt. Beth has over 16 years of flexible packaging experience and is the Executive Vice President of Great American Packaging, a flexible packaging manufacturer committed to being an industry leader in the development of sustainable packaging alternatives. Bruce is a highly accomplished senior executive with 35 years of domestic and international experience in industrial and consumer products manufacturing businesses. In 2011, he joined Great American Packaging as president, where he has gained intimate knowledge of material blending and the nuances of flexible materials. Bruce is a board member of the Western Plastics Association. John Haidt is a waste policy expert and serves as a member of the project team supporting Circular Action Alliance, or CAA, a nonprofit producer responsibility organization. Beth, Bruce, and John, thank you for joining us today.
It's hard to say, isn't it? Thank you, Miles. We appreciate it, and welcome to everyone. As Miles mentioned, the packaging landscape is indeed changing. And today, John and I are going to walk you through an alphabet soup of acronyms and help you to better understand what is extended producer responsibility, how EPR laws are managed, are you an obligated producer, how you can prepare today, and then we will answer your pre-submitted questions. And thank you to those of you who did submit questions ahead of time. As time allows, we will answer additional questions posted in the chats. And then if we can move on, starting with what is extended producer responsibility? EPR, or Extended Producer Responsibility, is a policy approach that assigns producers responsibilities for the end of life of covered products. We'll talk about that in a minute. This includes both the financial and operational responsibility, and recent EPR laws have focused attention on all packaging materials. I will say this is a very, very complex and dynamic topic, and many of the regulatory details are still in flux. So it's important to stay abreast of changes as they come to fruition and know when and where to ask the right questions. How does it work? The legislation designates the creation of a PRO, or Producer Responsibility Organization, to design, develop, and manage a plan for EPR. And we're fortunate to have one of those PROs on with us today. Under this plan, brand owners will be assessed fees for the use of covered materials supplied in a given state, and the PRO will then distribute funds to cover the costs of required program legislation. Who is affected? Great question, and actually we will all be affected. This includes brand owners, manufacturers, and even the end consumers. However, the weight of reporting and fees will fall on brand owners. And again, we're going to get into a lot more detail on what brand owners, what that means. Lastly, what are fees used for? The fees will provide funding for the end-of-life management of covered products, such as collection, sorting, and processing. And the specific costs and use of those fees will differ from state to state. So again, important to know what's going on in your state. This may include the development of resources for projects such as recycling, composting, and industrial recycling and composting facilities. So knowing where it's actually occurring is important. 4 states have already passed EPR legislation, including Maine, Colorado, Oregon, and right here at home in California. Looking into the future, 6 states are expected to pass EPR laws, including Minnesota this year in 24, followed by later Washington, Illinois, New Jersey, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island, and many more have momentum, are expected to join in the future. So it is important to stay abreast of what's going on in your state. And with that, I will hand it off to John to talk about how EPR laws are managed.
Awesome.
John?
Thanks so much, Beth, and thanks so much, Miles and Bruce and Kaylee, for having me today and having me join the presentation here. It's great to be here and great to get to share with all of you. As Beth said, my name is John. I work with Circular Action Alliance, and we are the producer responsibility organization that has been approved to implement or assist with implementation of Colorado, California, and fingers crossed, hopefully soon, Oregon's EPR for packaging programs. These are 3 of the 4 US states, as Beth said, that have passed an EPR for packaging program. So I'm going to walk through a little bit of background here on what is a producer responsibility organization, how it fits in and helps with producer compliance with EPR for packaging, and then we'll get into some of the specifics of EPR, how it operates, and some of the slight differences between states before we get to some of your questions at the end. So I would say, first and foremost, that a producer responsibility organization has 2 primary functions. Upstream, a producer responsibility organization is working with producers to help them, categorize and report their data to the producer responsibility organization. With that data and within the statutory requirements of a state's EPR program, the pro then develops a fee schedule. The goal of that fee schedule, and I'll get into some of the details of the fee setting in a little while, but the goal of a fee schedule is to create a fair funding structure. So producers are paying fees that are relevant to the type and amount of packaging that they're supplying onto the market. And then the producer responsibility organization, or pro, uses those fees to then fund the recycling program, again, in line with the requirements of the state statute. The primary way that the producer responsibility organization guides the funding of the funding and the organization of the EPR program in a given state is through what's called a program plan. So this program plan is a really key deliverable from a pro perspective. The program plan in each state, or CAA will be developing a program plan in Oregon, in California, and in Colorado that will be submitted to the state regulatory agency for approval. Once approved, that program plan has the force of law. And will be the guiding light for how the state's program, or the state's EPR program, is then run. So those are the 2 primary deliverables when you start thinking about and entering the EPR space. From a producer perspective, you're going to be engaging with CAA, or theoretically a different pro in a different state, on that reporting and fee payment end. But just keep in mind that the whole program is getting built out through the lens of this program plan that CAA will be or has already developed in some states. Actually, if we could go back 1 slide, Kaylee, that would be great for just a second. Producers are required to join the approved producer responsibility organization in any state where they supply covered materials. This is a key factor, a key takeaway, especially for those of you who are in the manufacturing space. These EPR laws don't apply to packaging that is manufactured in a given state. So if your manufacturing is based in California and you are selling packaging into California, but also into other states, there's only obligation on the packaging that is being supplied into California or into Colorado or into Oregon, for that matter. And producers will be required to join the approved pro in California, Colorado, and likely soon Oregon. CAA has been approved as the single pro in those states, so producers will need to join with Circular Action Alliance. And CAA has set a registration deadline of July 1st of 2024 for producers to register with the organizations. That deadline is actually coming up fairly soon. I'd say, if any of you, after we cover off a brief overview of who is generally obligated to do that reporting and to do that fee payment, if you believe that your company is likely to meet that obligation, I would really recommend that you head to our website, circularaction.org, and head to our registration page and fill out our registration form. Okay, with that, Kaylee, I think we can go on to the next slide. Thanks so much. So like I said, the program plan is this cornerstone element of the EPR program and really forms the basis for how the entire program gets developed. One of the key elements of the program plan and how that relates back to producer reporting and fee payment is the development of a set of reporting categories or covered materials. There are covered materials that are in scope for each EPR program, and I'll in a couple of slides go over sort of a thumbnail sketch of what materials are actually in scope for each state's EPR program. There is some difference between the states, but the program plan or the state, depending on the state statute, will develop out a set of reporting categories. These are the categories into which producers will be reporting their material to CAA, where CAA is approved, or theoretically, again, to a different pro. And then, like I said, fees will be assigned to producers based on the type and weight of product packaging, and we'll get into some of those details in a second. All right, so this is the key question that we get on a very regular basis from producers. I will say right off the bat, big asterisks in bold, highlighted, underlined in red. CAA is not your legal counsel, and we will not be able to provide you with a legal determination of whether or not you are an obligated producer. All of that said, I can give a quick thumbnail sketch here of who is generally likely to be the obligated entity under the different states' EPR for packaging programs. I would highly recommend that all of you work closely with your legal counsel to do a close review of these laws and to do a close review of the regulations as well to determine whether or not you may have obligations. The definition varies a bit state to state. Each of the 4 states has a slightly different statutory definition of obligated producer, and then each of the states also has some modifications and tweaks that have been made through the rulemaking process. So it is really important to review both the law itself, but also the rules. And as Beth said, some of the state rulemaking processes, in fact, all of the 4 state rulemaking processes are still in process. So we do not have finalized rules in any state that clarify the language in the statute. So I say all of that just to say that there are some things in motion here. There are elements of the definition of obligated producer that are fairly stable. There are many companies that are at this point able to be fairly confident that they will have an obligation here. But there are many edge cases where companies might not have a good sense. In terms of the entities who can be fairly certain at this point that they will have the obligation, and when I say obligation, again, the obligation is to join the approved pro in a given jurisdiction, to report the type and weight of packaging to the approved pro, and then to pay fees based on the type and weight of packaging to the approved pro. The 4 states are generally trying to obligate the brand owner first and foremost. There's a bit of a misnomer when we say extended producer responsibility in the case of the packaging space. The producer, when we talk about the producer of the packaging, there's often, I get a lot of questions about, well, isn't that the manufacturer of the packaging? Isn't that the company that's manufacturing the substrate, or that is, converting the packaging from a substrate into the packaging and then providing that to the co-packaging company, or providing it to the brand to do their own packaging. That's not who we're talking about when we're talking about the obligated producer in the context of EPR. Generally, these state programs are obligating the brand owner. If not the brand owner, then the licensee of the brand. And if not the licensee of the brand, then the first entity to import the product that is associated with packaging into either the US or into the state. And again, that's where there's some state differences here. So I'd say your quick litmus test for whether or not you're likely to have an obligation here to join CAA, report data to CAA, and pay fees to CAA is whether or not you own the brand of the product that's being sold. If you don't own the brand of the product that's being sold, you may have some obligations, but I'd say it's quite a bit less likely. And so we've got these two steps here. The first is like I said, work directly with your legal counsel. Again, CAA will be providing guidance. We are running a monthly workshop for producers where we are providing an overview and background and details on each of the state laws and the rulemaking processes and some of the tools and guidance that CAA is developing ourselves. But this summer, we're planning on releasing a lot more detailed guidance for producers. Again, it's not going to be legal advice. It's not going to be legal counsel. We aren't going to be making a legal determination of whether or not you meet the definition of obligated producer. At the end of the day, that is between producers and the state and producers' legal counsel. But CAA will be providing guidance. And so I would definitely encourage all of you to work with your legal counsel again to look through the statutes and look through the rules. So like I said, these are the three primary steps when we're talking about what obligation means. The first is to register with Circular Action Alliance in Oregon, California, and Colorado by July 1st of 2024. Maine, as Beth said, also has an EPR for packaging law. I should just say a little asterisk here. The Maine statute does not select a pro until fall of 2025, and the program does not start until quite a bit after that. So we have really, as an organization, we have really focused our attention on Oregon, California, and Colorado as the three states that are moving much faster through the EPR process. That said, we have been engaged with the Maine rulemaking process and have been had some really good conversations with the Maine Department of Environmental Protection, but we have not been as engaged in Maine, and therefore our registration is only applying to these three states at the outset here. And then the second step, like I've said, is to report material data to CAA. The first state where we will be looking for producer supply reports will be in Oregon in March of 2025. So for those of you keeping track, that's less than a year away. That's a very, very short amount of time for us to register producers, do the education that we need, and turn around accurate producer reports, or turn around to collect accurate producer reports from producers in Oregon. These are not timelines that CAA set. These are the statutory timelines that we're trying to work within. And so we recognize that this is very short, and our goal is to make it as bump-free a process as possible for producers. And I would say the best way to make sure that your own experience with EPR is as smooth as possible is to register with CAA and start showing up to our working groups on a monthly basis. That's where you'll really get, if this is a new topic for you, you'll get a real quick crash course in all of the obligations, and you'll be able to start getting a jump on preparing. And then lastly, paying fees across the states is that third major responsibility. And the fee payment, again, in each state will follow the report. So producers need to report first, and then CAA will provide invoices to producers, and producers will then submit those invoices with payment back to CAA. We expect first payments to start probably middle of July or middle of 2025, rather, July of 2025 for Oregon, and then in the other two states in Colorado and California later in 2025 and into early 2026. Sorry, Kaylee, next slide. Thank you. So we've been talking in sort of high level theoreticals here for a little while about, covered materials and EPR and packaging. And so we wanted to get a little bit specific here with CAA's thumbnail sketch across the states of specifically what we're talking about when we're talking about covered materials and in which sectors. Again, there's a lot of detail here beneath the surface. Each of the states has a pretty long list of exempted materials. Each state also has a fairly long list of exempted producers. So again, this is where it's really important for you to work with your legal counsel and for you to be doing some of your own homework here to make sure you're you at least understand what's in the statute and what's in the rules. But as a quick sort of overview thumbnail sketch here across the states, all 4 states include single-use packaging. 2 of the 4 states include printing and writing paper. That's Oregon and Colorado. And then all of the 4 states, to various extents, include plastic single-use food serviceware. In the case of California and Colorado, we're talking about, in the case of Oregon and Colorado, food serviceware really includes everything that you could consider food serviceware, including utensils, including straws, most of the materials that are going through fast food restaurant. In California, plastic single-use food serviceware includes most of that. Maine, when we're talking about food serviceware, Maine DEP has interpreted the definition of packaging in Maine to include some food serviceware where that food serviceware is in fact packaging. For materials like straws and utensils that are not considered strictly packaging, Maine DEP does not see those included in the definition of packaging in Maine. So you can start to see, even with that overview of what we're talking about with covered materials across the different states, that it is not straightforward, and definitely is complex. And CAA will continue, like I said, to develop out and provide guidance to producers at a more detailed level about exactly what's in scope here across the states. But it is definitely a complex space at the moment. And then in terms of sectors, Kaylee, if we could just, quickly stay on that slide for just a moment. In terms of sectors, all of the states include residential packaging. So residential, we're really talking about consumer packaging. This is material that is sold to a consumer either at point of sale at retail or through an internet transaction. 2 of the 4 states, California and Oregon, include all packaging. So not just consumer residential packaging, but also commercial. And here we're talking about both business to consumer and business to business material. That is a huge, broad swath of material. When you start thinking about all of the different types of packaging that are used in industrial processes, so this includes secondary and tertiary distribution packaging. So, if you're distributing lip balm, the actual tube the lip balm is in, packaging. The blister pack and the card that the lip balm is in, that is packaging. The box that all of the lip balms are in that are sent to a retailer, that's packaging. The shrink wrap around the boxes that are on a pallet, that is also packaging. All of that is in scope in California and in Oregon. All of that is not in scope in Colorado and Maine. In Colorado and Maine, we're just talking about anything that's sold to a consumer. So it would be the tube around the lip balm, it would be the card and the blister pack that is around the lip balm if it's going to a consumer. And if there's an e-commerce sale and then that lip balm in the blister pack and the card is in another box, the box for the e-commerce purposes would be in scope. But if it's sold off of the shelf at a CVS or a Rite Aid, then it's only the lip balm tube and the card and the blister pack. So hopefully that example gives you a sense of some of the differences, again, between California and Oregon and Colorado and Maine. Sorry, Kaylee, next slide, please. Just to quickly walk through here, fees get very, very complicated very, very quickly, so I will spare you the gory details and just give a quick overview. But generally speaking, in the fee setting process, CAA as a pro will be developing out all of the different facets and elements of what running the recycling program in a given state will look like. That planning work will inform a budget development process. Once CAA has a full budget, CAA will then work to allocate the costs of that budget to the different types of materials that are in scope of the program based on a couple of factors, but primarily the costs of that particular material to manage through the recycling system, and a concept that's known, it's sort of picked up now as a term of art in the EPR space, called eco-modulation, which is really this concept of eco-design. So each of the state's EPR programs requires not just that producers pay their fair share for the management of their material, but that a number of sustainability considerations be included in the fee structure. So the simplest way to explain this would be, in Oregon, for instance, if a material is considered recyclable in the state of Oregon, it needs to carry a lower fee than a material that is not considered recyclable. So if your material is considered recyclable in Oregon, you can expect that you will be paying a lower fee relative to a material that is not considered recyclable. And so that's this concept of eco-modulation or eco-design that is also built into the fees and the ways that the fees are structured. In order to set these fees, CA has developed out a set of guiding principles. These include, principles like fairness and harmonization. We're trying to make sure that the methodology of how we're developing fees across the different states makes as much sense and is as harmonized as possible. And then, of course, significant data and modeling, which is also part of why we need producers to be registering with the organization as soon as possible to start preparing and reporting data into the organization, because we can't set fair fees unless we know how much packaging and what type of packaging is being supplied into a given state. Over to you, Beth.
All right, thanks, John. That is a lot to digest and really great information. So again, thank you. If we can move to the next slide, Kaylee. So how, as brand owners, manufacturers, and producers, what do we need to do and how can we prepare? So the very first thing we want to think about is, how do you stay abreast of changes in your state? For they're vastly different and a lot of dynamics. So, for example, in California, SB 54 was put into law in June of 22. And I'm going to bring in an alliteration here: Plastic Pollution Prevention and Packaging Producer Responsibility Act requires that by 2032 we cut single-use plastic by 25%. We recycle 65% of our single-use plastic, and ensure that 100% of our single-use plastic is either recyclable or compostable. I'm going to get back to that in just a minute. If we can go to the next slide, Kaylee. So what can we actually do about this? Now that we're staying abreast of information and we know what's going on in our state, what can we do? Well, the very first thing, and John mentioned eco-modulation. Well, how do we actually implement that? And one of the things that we can do is looking at right-sizing packaging with effective and lightweight solutions. Oftentimes, products can be over-packaged, and that might be the film gauge or the size of the bag. So right-sizing your packaging can be not only an economical solution, but also an aesthetic solution as well. Second, recyclable and recycling, very, very impactful terms here. And you want to make sure you understand the definitions by your state. They will change by state, and they're going to potentially change over time. So it is very important to ask your supplier if your packaging is recyclable, if you do not already know. Speaking of, there's a very important a misnomer out in the marketplace, at least with consumers: multi-layer films. And this includes the stand-up pouches and many multi-layer roll stock used for form, fill, and seal applications. But if your film is multi-layer, there is a very good chance that it is not recyclable. And that is because there are multiple substrates attached to each other, either through co-extrusion or other applications. But if you have multiple substrates in a multi-layer film, it may not be recyclable. So it is important to understand that. Right gauging those monolayer films can be a solution that meets both your shelf life and manufacturing specifications. Not always, but can be a solution. And then third, you want to start testing compostable materials now. There could be scenarios in the future where compostable options may be a more effective solution for both flexible and potentially even rigid packaging as well. So again, important to start testing that now so you can be ready as legislation changes. So Kaylee, next slide. So moving on, we want to do thank you to those of you who submitted your questions ahead of time. And the very first question we got was, my state doesn't have EPR laws, but my business sells to products in states that do. What regulations am I required to follow? And John, I'm going to let you answer that one.
Absolutely. Yeah, I already kind of mentioned, or I scooped this question a little bit earlier, but EPR laws apply to packaging supplied into a given state. I don't say the word sold because each of the states' definition of either producer or packaging, lists out sold, sold into, or distributed. So, if you think about like donated food, for instance, donated food would not be exempted from these statutes, just because it isn't sold strictly. So we use the blanket term supplied. If your packaging is supplied into Colorado, California, Oregon, or Maine, if you meet the definition of obligated producer, or your customers may have an obligation here. However, and just to double down on that again, if you're manufacturing in California, if you're manufacturing in Colorado, if you're manufacturing in Oregon, this is not a fee that you're paying on all units manufactured in the state with the EPR law. This is only applying to the product supplied into California. So if you're manufacturing in California and you're distributing to Idaho, none of the material that's going to Idaho needs to be reported to the state, needs to be reported to CAA, needs to have a fee paid on it. It is only material supplied into a state with an EPR obligation.
All right, thank you. Next question, when will California food processors need to start reporting non-recyclable packaging materials, and what is the format for reporting?
So I would sort of reframe the question just a little bit to say, when will California food processors need to start reporting packaging materials? Because food processors or food brand owners will need to start reporting packaging to CAA, whether it's recyclable or non-recyclable. Obligated producers need to be reporting all materials supplied that meets the definition of packaging or food serviceware in California to Circular Action Alliance. As to the question of when, CAA has set a preliminary deadline for producer reporting in California of August of 2025. So there's some lead time if you are only supplying packaging into the state of California, or if you're only supplying products that carry packaging into the state of California. You've got a bit of a lead time here, but again, CA has set up that July 1st, 2024 registration deadline. So producers will need to register by July 1st of 2024 of this year. And then you've got, 15 months to do your reporting preparation, work with CAA, make sure that your data management is correct, to then start reporting in August of 2025.
All right. Raw material wise, what is your product portfolio? PCR, PIR, bio-based, etc. Thank you to the person who submitted this one. But I will tell you, we do offer certified compostable ASTM D6400 tested, BPI TUV certified for both in-home and industrial composting. We also have a recyclable plant-based, that is both recyclable and plant-based product, post-industrial recycled content. Post-consumer PCR is available, but if you're looking for food safe, it is challenging to obtain. If you are going to a supplier looking for this product, it is important to ask for a letter of non-objection if you require food safe PCR. And a host of other products as they come available, which is an entirely new other webinar in and of itself. So thank you for that question. And then how available are compostable and plant-based packaging options as alternatives? So this is a very complex topic as well and very dynamic. There are many bio-based and compostable product options that are out there that are stable and can meet barrier and aggregation requirements. At this point, there has not been a complete replacement that can be made to scale. So it's important to start testing the films now, like we said before, so that you can quickly maneuver as legislation changes. Hope that answers the question. Next one. What questions should I be asking the CAA, and what questions should I be asking my legal team, John?
It's a good question. I think in terms of asking your legal team, if I can start there, I would say, be working with your legal team to really understand the statutes and what the statutes require, to start working through the draft rules in each state to understand how the rules that may be promulgated over the next couple of months may change the definition of obligated producer. And then in terms of working with CAA, we, like I said, we will be providing guidance to producers this summer to start making sure that you are doing your data management properly and to make sure that you're prepared to start reporting if you're supplying into Oregon by March of 2025 or in California or Colorado by August of 2025. And then, really, I just reiterate that July 1st, 2024 registration deadline. We're currently hosting, like I said, a monthly workshop for producers. That workshop will be closed to only entities that have registered with CAA following our May meeting. So, definitely stay close to the organization, register, and then stay in touch as we continue to work through this process, and we'll do our best to give you the guidance that you need to stay on top of everything.
All right, and with that, we will open it up to any additional questions we have in the chat. Bruce, I'm gonna bring you in so that we can address some of the questions.
Sure. So the first question that came up was, again, a little bit finer point on the issue of who is a producer. So the question is, are distributors who purchase from manufacturers and resell to end users obligated to consider themselves producers?
It's a good question, Bob, and it depends a little bit state to state. I would say, generally speaking, if the brand owner of the particular, so you use the term manufacturer here, I'm going to assume by manufacturer you mean the manufacturer and brand owner. So this is a company that's manufacturing their good, putting it in packaging and slapping their brand on the bag. If you are purchasing from them and then you are taking it into Colorado or into California, as long as the entity that that brand owner manufacturer, as long as they're located in the US, they still have the obligation. And so there is an ongoing conversation, and CAA is working to figure out guidance for producers on exactly how that brand owner is meant to figure out how much of their material is sold in California or in Oregon or in Colorado if they're working through a distributor. And we're working on that, and we'll provide that guidance. But that obligation wouldn't fall on you. If you are pulling in if you're pulling in packaging, or if you're pulling in product that's in packaging from an international brand owner manufacturer, there may be an obligation on you as a distributor. The sort of first importer distributor is the final catch-all for any product that doesn't have a brand owner manufacturer located in the US. I'm seeing you're qualifying here, not a finished brand product, only the packaging before it is filled. Then no. The only instance where there may be, and I say may, be an obligation on an entity that is manufacturing packaging, the film and flexible packaging, or multi-material packaging that is manufacturing raw, OCC, not OCC, but raw corrugate. The only instance where an entity of a Huhtamaki, a Bunzl, one of these other packaging manufacturers, Great American Packaging, would be obligated is if you are supplying if you're supplying something like food serviceware into Oregon that's being sold on a retail shelf. So if you are, private label owner of a brand of food serviceware that is being sold on the shelf of a grocery store in Oregon, for instance, or in some instances in Colorado, you may have an obligation. Otherwise, no. We're just talking about the brand owner, the company that is selling the product that has their brand on the packaging. So sorry, that was a little bit circular, but hopefully that helped.
Okay. There's another question. So how can we in the industry who are manufacturers of packaging support CAA in getting the word out and helping our customers understand their obligation?
It's a great question, Bruce. I would say the number one way to do that is just to let your customers know that this is an obligation, first of all. I think, as Beth said, EPR is going to impact everybody in the value chain, right? Like the manufacturers of packaging are going to see some kind of impact here. Your customers are going to come back to you and they're going to say, hey, we want to try and lower our fees under a state's EPR law. how can we work with you to make sure that our packaging is more sustainably designed within the mandates of a given state's EPR structure? Well, if you're going to help them meet that, you're going to have to understand what those sustainability incentives are in each state, and they don't always align. We're working as much as we can to make sure that they align to ease producer reporting and producer compliance, but they don't always. So I would say, you're going to have some engagement with these laws. You're going to have some impact to your company. And I think the best way to get out in front of that is to make sure that your clients, your customers understand that they are going to be the primary obligated entity here, and that they are going to have to register with CAA, and that they are going to have to stay in touch with the organization to make sure that they can keep you in the loop as well. So I think it really puts pressure on everyone here to stay in touch and to pay attention. But certainly from your perspective, I would make sure your customers are aware that this is happening and that they're registered with Circular Action Alliance.
Okay. And then just to be clear, in all states, is the amount of material based on weight?
Yes.
Okay. And then on the fee structure that's being created, is environmental impact at all a factor in determining the fee structure, or is it simply a function of recyclability?
Oh boy. That's a very good question, Bruce. It's a very good question. And it depends. California has placed a premium. SB 54 has placed a premium on recyclability. So the primary driving factor in whether or not a package or particular type of packaging is incentivized or not in California is whether or not it can be recycled in the state. And what counts as recyclable in California isn't actually defined in SB 54, the EPR law. SB 54 looks to SB 343, which many of you may be familiar with in California. This is the truth in labeling law. SB 343 sets out a litmus test for what material can count as recyclable or not in the state. And there's a sister law, AB 1201, that does the same thing for compostable packaging. That is the primary focus of SB 54 from a sustainability perspective. I think there are some cases where ensuring a material is actually recyclable may not actually be the most sustainable from an LCA perspective. But this is the direction that SB 54 is pushing producers in. Oregon has taken a different tack. Oregon has said, we want to put a premium on life cycle sustainability considerations. And so Oregon's incentives within the fee structure must be based on life cycle assessment results. Exactly how that will play out from an operational perspective is something that CAA is still working through with the state. But keep in mind that the incentives that producers see in Oregon may look different than the incentives that they see in California based on where each state is looking to incentivize producers towards.
Okay. And then the last question I have is, as we look down the road where the percentage of recycled content increases, if the state has identified a material as non-recyclable, what happens down the road?
Well, there's kind of two different pieces there. I mean, one is the PCR content, and say across the 3 states, PCR is variously incentivized or required. So in Colorado, Circular Action Alliance is required as part of our program plan that will be submitted by February of next year to set a minimum PCR content level for all packaging supplied into the state. It's not a minimum PCR level per producer or per type of packaging. It's a minimum PCR amount. And then it is up to CAA to work with each producer to make sure that producers jointly meet that PCR amount. In Oregon, California, and Colorado, there are financial incentives. There are fee reductions for producers who use a larger amount of post-consumer recycled content. So there's benefits already within the fee structure to using PCR. But then in terms of the recyclability question, Bruce, I would point specifically to California and make sure that everybody is aware that under SB 54, by 2032, 100% of packaging needs to be either compostable or recyclable. And again, recyclability and what counts as recyclable or compostable under SB 54 looks to these other 2 statutes, SB 343 and AB 1201. I will say there are some types of packaging that are not currently considered recyclable in California. Film and flexible in particular is a material that is not currently considered recyclable under the state's determinations for SB 343 and AB 1201. And I think film and flex is going to face a bit of an uphill trek over the next 8 years towards that 2032 deadline. How strictly the state enforces that 2032 requirement that all material be recyclable or compostable by 2032, the flip side of which would be that if a material isn't considered recyclable by 2032, there's a de facto ban on that material. How strictly CalRecycle enforces that remains to be seen, but part of CAA's work as the approved pro in California over the next couple of years as we develop out our program plan in California ahead of an April 1, 2026 submission will be to map out what a pathway forward for some of these materials is that currently are not considered recyclable, but could theoretically be brought up to that level by 2032. So just wanted to split that, the PCR piece from the recyclability piece.
Okay, thank you. I think the last question somebody asked is the recording going to be shared?
It certainly is. Thank you so much, everyone. I think we'll go ahead and wrap up today's webinar. On behalf of the IDDBA, I'd like to thank Great American Packaging, the Circular Action Alliance, Beth, Bruce, and John for today's insightful and informative session. If you are interested in presenting or sponsoring an IDDBA webinar, please contact webinars@iddba.org or visit our webinars page at iddba.org under the Trend Center tab. Thank you, everyone, for attending and for your continued support of IDDBA. Have a great rest of your day.
There's no better venue for a brand like ours to be able to invite customers, find new customers, and show them our wares. I mean, this is a great venue, great show.
It's been a tremendous joy to be here, and something for a small company, a family business, where you come meet people, and we've met some really good retailers, right from Trader Joe's, Sam's Club, to smaller retailers, but everybody's been very welcoming, and we've had some really good conversations.
You get to get in front of a large audience, right? They all come to us. We don't have to go everywhere. It's in a central location. And what's nice about it is every year it goes to a different spot in the U.S. where we can reach more customers.
We're very proud to be part of IDDBA because it has opened us a lot of opportunities in retail, in in-store bakeries to present our macaron lines to key buyers. For me, attending IDDBA is like attending the best bakery show of the year in the USA. So many opportunities, it's really my favorite show.
The foot traffic has been high for all 3 days. The breadth of people in the industry, whether it's retailers, brokers, manufacturers, was great. I mean, it's a well-attended show.
Yeah, we love participating in the IDDBA because we think it's a great opportunity to meet very good people to discuss about to develop our product in the market in the United States. And then I think it's maybe 7 years that we participate in the IDDBA, and we are very happy to be here.